How do we get puppies to calm down? We give them scritches. That is how we get them to calm down. Hello and welcome to the NovelTea Knitting Podcast, back in our usual location once again. As ever, I am your host, Emma, and I am here to talk to you about all things knitting, crafty, basically anything cozy that takes my fancy. This is my lovely assistant, Elena, who will, I'm sure, eventually settle down on the couch over here out of frame. But for right now, she's being snuggly with Mama, and we love that. So last episode was obviously a bit of an experiment for me, and I really, really loved it. But I will still be recording probably about every other episode back here in the studio, as we so generously have named the smallest room in our house. As for tea, I have an... Can't play right now. It's not playtime. It's recording time. If you're new here, Elena will just jump in and out of frame as she decides to do so. But we carry on, and in this case, we are talking about tea real quick. It is in my 101 Dalmatians mug, which is one of my all-time favorite Disney movies. And it is an old staple for me. It is orange and cinnamon spice, which is a Twinings herbal tea. And it is actually something that I first found when I was living in Paris. And I don't think I've ever found it on the shelves here in the United States at just like my usual grocery stores. So I have to order boxes of this online, and I haven't done so in a while, and I'm extremely pleased with it. The first thing that I'm going to talk about today is kind of, the biggest deal. It is my Ena sweater. Once again, I do not have a ton of projects that I've been working on. In fact, it is the same 2 projects that I was working on as of last time, but I have just made, fairly considerable progress, I think, in both of those regards. And the last episode, I was probably about here. I had not completely finished this yoke. I had finished to, if you can see it, the red line here. And I was working on doing just one more repeat of the pattern, even though that's not what the actual pattern called for. Will you jump up then? Jump up! She's being such a butt today. Now, I think that I would have... I can say with authority that this sweater would have been much further along if it weren't for the fact that I ended up switching yarns. As you can see, I started out with this light gray on top, and I knew that I didn't have enough of that light gray to knit the entire sweater. So I had always planned on doing the bottom half in a different color. I had planned on doing it in this cream color. This is also a alpaca blend, just like the top here. I don't actually know what the difference is with these. I'm pretty sure this is 100% alpaca or something close to it, and this had a couple add-ins, a couple different things that changed it. But for some reason, I thought that this was a DK weight. This gray, definitely a DK weight. It had the label and everything, and it said on the label that this was a DK weight. So this sweater is a DK sweater, and so that's what I started with. And then when I got to this, I knit probably about 20 rows, at least 20 rows, maybe more. And I realized that it's definitely not a DK weight. I don't have any idea where I got the notion that this was a DK weight, because it doesn't say on the tag. Like, it just doesn't say anywhere on the tag. This is why I wanted to use it in the first place, is because this was something like 600 yards or something like that, and I was like, oh, that's brilliant. That way, that will be perfect. That will be the amount that I need, basically, to get me the rest of my sweater, and then hopefully have a little bit left over. Now, I am not opposed to mixing weights. I ended up having to take out, like I said, more than 20 rows because the fabric just didn't feel right. And if the fabric had felt fine, then I would have left it. I would have kept going. But the fabric just felt really a lot more drapey, I guess, I think is the way I would describe it. I took loads of pictures of it before I took it all out, just so that I could make sure that I had something to show you guys, so you would believe me when I say that that I genuinely got a ton of work done before I ended up having to take a bunch of it out. I know, it's so sad. You gotta comfort Mama, huh? Yeah, 'cause I had to take out that sweater. So on the bright side, after having tried that on, I know for a fact that I definitely love the feel of the definitely love the feel of the cabled yoke. It is still up in the air whether or not I will like it like under my arms, but I think that has a lot to do with how you're just being a problem today. I should have a disclaimer at the beginning of my podcast, like in Flies and Hellhounds. It's a puppy interrupted podcast. Just like Flies and Hellhounds. Right, so I did get to try it on, not with the sleeves, obviously, which is kind of my biggest concern, but I am kind of excited to cast on the sleeves, which is insane, but I am excited to cast on these sleeves because this pattern did something that I am not accustomed to, where it had me knit several rows on the back, and not short rows, just knit several rows, and then I'm going to pick up the size of those rows and add those to the just the amount on my sleeve, basically, so that it'll just mean that I have like a slightly chunkier sleeve on the back, at least, I think. And I really like the idea of that. I feel like that's going to be really, really good for my particular touch sensitivities. But yes, as you can see, I have made up the progress that I had gotten done prior, that I had done with the cream color, probably a little bit more even. I have been keeping very close track of exactly how much I do every day. So nice just to track my progress to see like when I have really good days and I'm able to get, 6 or 7 rows, and when I have less good days when I'm only able to get 2 or 3. When I was knitting with the cream, I actually managed to do huge chunks at a time. I would do 10 or 11 rows and it went really, really fast. And I think I just lost a bit of steam because the cream color didn't work out, and so having to cast it back on and then working in this different yarn. And if I'm being entirely honest, I'm a little bit nervous about using this yarn as an extremely different feel from the alpaca on top. Both the texture and the thickness of the fabric. But it is a nice fabric. It's not too loose and too drapey like the alpaca, like the fingering weight alpaca was. I think probably the best way to describe the difference in the texture is in stiffness. So this feels really soft and creamy and luxurious, and this is a merino blend, and it just feels a lot stiffer. It is this Space Cadet yarn, which my husband got for me several birthdays ago, and it's in the colorway Dark Skies on the Lyra base, which is a 100% superwash merino wool. That's what I was looking for. And I don't entirely know what is making it feel give me that stiffness, because it's still super squishy like a DK weight is supposed to be. I think that maybe it just has a really tight ply. And especially in comparison to this alpaca, which has quite a loose ply, which is just making it feel a little bit more drapey. I think that it will probably be okay. I'm not ready to panic yet or anything. And the reason that I went with this is because this is just what I have in my stash. And I'm trying really, really hard this year to only knit from stash. So I am definitely mixing materials here for sure. They are much more close to being the same weight. I did switch to a larger needle size once I started the body because the yarn is just that little bit stiffer, and I definitely like the texture of it better than when I first started knitting it. I did just knit some of those convenient back rows, and I decided after a few of those that I just didn't really care for the texture. So I thought the texture was like a little bit too tight, which was the complete opposite of what I was having happen with the alpaca, the fingering weight alpaca. So I went up a needle size, and I think that the texture of this fabric is really good. I think that if I were knitting a sweater out of just this, I would think this is absolutely gorgeous and lovely and soft. It's just the fact that it's compared to this buttery soft alpaca on top. But the reason that I have sort of tentatively carried on is because I think that when it blocks, it will get softer and less stiff. The only place where I'm a little bit worried about that contrast is at the point where it joins the arms. So I am thinking I do have a little bit more of this light gray left, so I think that I will cast on my sleeves in the light gray and do that for a couple of rows just to make sure that the point where that meets is not too far up on my arm, because the higher up on my arm it is, the more sensitive my tactile sensitivity is. I am not positive that this combined with another skein is going to be enough. I did just finish the first ball of yarn, and I need to wind this one up and then cast that on with that. But this was not a full skein of yarn, so I had used some of it, maybe half at the most of that skein. I will be able to get more than just this chunk, this 25 or so rows, which is good because I think I need about 80 rows in total, if I'm following the pattern exactly. And then I need to have enough left over to do my arms. Then I'm thinking I will do the hem, the ribbed bottom, in this light gray alpaca again, and I'll do the same with the cuffs on the sleeves. My only backup plan, if this does not prove to be enough yarn, is that I do have some navy blue DK weight that's just here. And this one is, I'm just going to be mixing all the yarns, so this will most definitely be a hand wash. This will be like a very gentle, in the sink kind of wash job. But this is merino wool, microfiber, and 10% cashmere. So if I need to, I'm hoping I definitely don't need to do this for the bottom ribbing, because I don't like the idea of it going gray, dark gray, and then navy blue on this. But I kind of like the idea of it doing that on the sleeve, because it feels less like the sleeve is like continuous from the yoke. And so if I do the dark gray and then have this as navy blue as the cuff for my sweater, I think that will be quite cute. And of course, there's always the option, part of the reason that I decided to go with this, rather than any of the other DK weight that I have, is that I can order more of this. I know that this company, Space Cadet Yarn, still makes this base, still makes this, color. I'm pretty sure they make this color. The rest of my DK weight, which is in this little cubby here, nothing was really quite right. I either definitely didn't have enough of it, or it is already earmarked for a different sweater. So I know that was a whole lot about this one sweater, this one project, but I think that just about covers everything. The other thing that I have carried on working on since the beach episode is the baby blanket, of course. I now have a definite date for when this needs to be finished, because I have been invited to the baby shower. So I need to finish this by mid-April, which I think is very doable. I can probably have this done by the end of the month. I'm averaging probably about 2 to 3 rows a day. A lot of times I will do more than that, but sometimes I will do none. So about 2 to 3 rows a day is definitely my average. I've gotten a ton of compliments on the colors on this. Holding it up like this, I do just have to say that this is way bigger than I intended it to be, I think. It had been so long since I cast one of these on. I must have crocheted, I don't know, 8 of these in a single year, or in like a 1.5 year period or something, because I had so many cousins and friends having children. And then everyone seemed to be done for a while. So I haven't had a chance to cast this on again, and I have forgotten to, or neglected to, write down the pattern. So I cast on how many stitches in chain. I cast on how many I thought I needed, and turns out it makes a really, really big blanket. But I am about at the halfway point for what I was planning on having be the entire length of it. Probably it will be like a this way blanket, like when they use it, they'll use it in this direction. Gosh, that in itself is probably a baby blanket. Ooh, it's gonna be really big. Is that bad? It's gonna be bigger than I thought it was gonna be. Gosh, I don't know if I am crocheting larger or like more loosely than I did before, or if I really genuinely screwed up the cast on, but geez, that's huge. Okay, that's fine. That's totally fine. Everything's fine. I haven't been nearly as worried about this as I have been on previous projects, because this one I'm working on from these 500-gram skeins. So in the past, I've had to be worried about running out of yarn. So usually they take about 600 grams each. So that's already a pretty massive baby blanket. And I will use 3 colors, 2 skeins of each color. And this time, though, since I'm using the 500-gram skein, I was like, I can just go and go and go and go. And that's really nice for this blanket, but when I want to cast on the next one, I'm going to have to be a lot more careful, and I'm going to have to actually weigh this yarn before I pick it up and start casting on with it. Something different about this blanket that I am doing slightly differently from previous blankets is that I am going to now reverse the colors. So I'm basically using this teal as a center piece, and then everything will be just the opposite. So the next color will be this blue, light blue, and then the greenish color, and then so on and so forth. So let's see, how many rows more is that? It's obviously 3 more stripes each of each color. So that's 45 rows, and I am doing, that feels like wrong, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Take me a total of 22 days. Done well in advance of the deadline. And honestly, especially once I get towards the end of this, I have a tendency to be like, see the finish line and be able to sprint for the finish line. Can I just say, I hated math. Like, I was not good at math when I was in school. I hate math, but I love knitting math. I don't know what it is. I think it's just really, really satisfying. It always makes me feel really clever when I figure out some math or work out some math. I think that in particular, I really like being able to figure out small goals for myself to meet each day or each week or whatever, and saying, okay, I need to get this much done by the end of this period. It gives me a sense of real satisfaction when I'm able to meet those smaller goals that ultimately result in a very large goal that I'm able to work towards. There's some kind of life lesson there, but I'm just gonna keep talking about yarn. I did just really quickly want to talk about my Banff cardigan here. I am still very much in love with this cardigan, even though I have chosen to wear my Schnee today instead, and not with a belt this time, because I'm not wearing it for fashion reasons. I am wearing it because it is knitted, because I was wearing a more professional looking cardigan over this that actually matched what I was wearing. The reason that I wanted to bring this up is because one of the things that I really like to do on this channel is talk about my mistakes, because I think that it can feel, especially with Instagram and everything, it can feel like most knitters, or maybe just the knitters in your circle of influence, never make mistakes. Like, oh, they just have one project after another that just looks fantastic, that they're able to whip out super fast, and all of that. And that is not the case for me, or I think for anybody. I make mistakes all the time. And so, the mistake that I wanted to discuss with this is, that it got washed. Yeah, so I thought it was fine. I put it into the washing machine on gentle cycle, which is what I generally do with my knits. I know that you really should hand wash them, but I don't have the time or patience for that. So I threw this in with my other knits. It probably didn't really need to be washed, which makes this all the more frustrating. But yeah, so I washed it and it shrank. Yep, it shrank. This one had to be put in the dryer in order to make it shrink a little bit. This one, not so much. I know the yarn that I used, but I don't remember if it was superwash or not. I'm gonna assume, based on this, that it is not superwash. So it was the Knit Picks Wool of the Andes. So I ended up having to re-block this. So I got it out of the washing machine and I hung it to dry, and then I tried it on, and I just hated it. The sleeves had shrunk to an uncomfortable level. The bottom had shrunk more than I like, especially with like what is supposed to be a big chunky cardigan. And I was so sad, but I soaked it, and then I took it out of the soak and blocked it again. And I think I overdid it just a little bit on the length of the sweater, but it's fine. I would rather it be too long than too short. You can definitely still see some of my jagged edges. I really, really need to get blocking wires, because right now all I have are the pins, and that always leaves this little scallop sometimes, especially if I'm like really aggressively blocking something. It does fit better now, like it fits the way I like it now, even with the extra length. It is just not quite as soft and lovely as it was before. But it's okay. I'll still wear it, especially as what I usually wear it as, which is layering. So most often I'll use this when I am wearing a long sleeve shirt anyway, or a sweatshirt or something, and I just need extra warmth because it's a particularly chilly day. So I will definitely still be wearing this, but the lesson to be learned here is to not just throw all of your knits in the washing machine. Know that for the most part, a lot of things can be put in the washing machine, but not in the dryer, or can only be tumble dried, or there's this big spectrum from, acrylic to wool with what you're able to do with it in terms of washing. And the lesson here is just to double check. Like, make sure you double check before you put something in the washer. And it's okay if you remember. Like, if you remember, oh, I've washed this several times before, I can definitely put that in the washing machine and it'll be fine. Then that's fine. But if you don't know, if you haven't put it in the washing machine in a long time, or ever, just double check. That's my advice. I also wanted to share with you guys a project that has been languishing for a very long time now, and I have not made any new progress on it, no, but I wanted to show it because I have the intention of working on it. And I especially find that doing this podcast motivates me to work on things that I wouldn't necessarily have the motivation to work on, because I think to myself, oh, well, I can't come back to the podcast and not have worked on that thing when I said that I was going to have it done in the next episode, or whatever. This will not be done in the next episode, but it is my scrappy blanket, which is already just completely massive, and I absolutely love it. It is using up all of my fingering weight scraps for anyone that is new or doesn't know, or was not around for the fad that was the scrappy blanket for a very long time. This is going to be a queen size blanket, because we have a queen size bed, and it is gotten to the point now where I definitely don't take this out with me anymore. It just kind of sits in this basket here in the studio, and it has been a very, very long time since I worked on it, which makes me very, very sad. So, because I love this. It's so fun to work on, especially in the winter. And of course, I am now saying that I'm going to start working on it right as we're on the cusp of spring. I would really like to work on this. It's fun to work on and have it as a blanket while I'm working on it. The problem is that I tend to put this on my lap, and for some reason, my pets love my knits. So as soon as this is on my lap, I have at least one puppy, and probably Alistair, our orange cat as well, is almost definitely on my lap while I'm working on this, so that once I get to the end of a row, which does take a very long time, it's very hard to get started on the next row because I have to take this and flip it in order to work on the next bit. But here, this is me. I am definitely committing to working on this again. I already have a magic cake that I have caked up to work on this, and I'm hoping to get at least 2 rows done by the next episode, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but again, this is fingering weight yarn. It is using a C hook for crochet, and it is just huge. And I am still prioritizing right now working on my Ena sweater and that baby blanket. What I do every day is basically say, okay, I need to knit this many rows on the Ena and this many rows on the baby blanket, and then I can work on this blanket. I have been telling myself that for quite a while now, for several days now, and I haven't yet gotten to the point where I have done both of those things, both the 2 rows on the baby blanket and the 5 rows on the Ena. But I have hope that today will be the day, as I record this, that I am able to get to my scrappy blanket, because I think I have only 1 row left to knit on the Ena. And then I can work on this. And with that, I am starting to lose my voice a little bit, so I think we're gonna end it here. I hope you guys all enjoyed this episode. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!